Wait, what? Rings of Power Season 2 lost 60% of the first season's audience according to third-party ratings report? Why would it lose 60% of its audience? Does anybody know why it would lose 60% of its audience? Because I can't think of any reasons why that would happen. Luminate report. Minutes watched for Marvel series and Lord of the Rings first 12 weeks of activity. Rings of Power Season 1 2022 had almost 8 billion minutes watched for the whole season. And then Rings of Power Season 2 only has about, a little over 3 billion minutes, and that's it. That means its viewership dropped by more than half. Why would it drop by more than half? I can't figure out why it would drop by more than half. What was the percentage again? 60%? Yeah. Why did Rings of Power drop by 60% from the first to second season? The showrunners, when the show started, said the driving question behind the production, can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote and do it as a mega event series that could only happen now? Can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote? Tolkien, probably the greatest author to ever live. Can anybody think of a reason why Rings of Power lost 60% of its viewers between Season 1 and Season 2? In Tolkien's writings, Galadriel was feminine and ethereal and likable, but in Amazon's Rings of Power they decided to turn her into a warrior. They decided to turn her into a strong woman girl boss, just like countless other female characters that are being written today. I wonder why Rings of Power would lose 60% of its audience between Season 1 and Season 2. I can't figure out why that would happen. In Season 2, Amazon decided to make the orcs family men. I always thought that the orcs were monsters in the Lord of the Rings books, but Amazon decided to correct Tolkien himself and rewrite the orcs so that they just want to have families and have a home and not go to war and all that kind of stuff. Do any of you know why Rings of Power lost so much of its viewership? Can any of you figure out why Rings of Power lost so much of its audience? Because I don't know why. I can't figure it out. Lindsay Weber, the producer of the series, once said, "It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like." Even though Middle-earth is a fantasy world. In other words, it's not a real world. It's not meant to reflect the real world because fantasy by its definition does not reflect what the real world actually looks like. And Lord of the Rings, it is kind of based on European mythology and folklore, and it was kind of meant to be a mythology for England. Does anybody know why Rings of Power has lost so much of its audience? When Season 1 of Rings of Power came out, and everybody hated it, the people at Amazon decided to call the fans racist. I'm honestly not sure why Rings of Power has lost so much of its audience. Can you think of any reason? Because I can't think of any reason. This is a character in Rings of Power. Does anybody know why Rings of Power lost 60% of its audience between Season 1 and Season 2? Because I can't figure it out. I mean, what the hell is this? Is this Slim Shady? I guess this is actually a woman, or it's a they them, or it's a, I don't know what this is. I just know that it's not a Tolkien character. I'm not sure why Rings of Power has lost so much of its audience. I can't figure it out. Rings of Power. Okay, we ship them. This is Isildur. They turned him into a simp, and this is some random woman in the show. Can any of you think of why Amazon has lost so much of its audience with Rings of Power? Oh, they also ship Galadriel and Sauron. Galadriel Nation, how are you doing? I always thought that Galadriel never had any kind of romantic relationship with Sauron. I always thought that she was married to Celeborn by this point in the history of Middle-earth. I have no idea why Amazon's viewership has dropped so much from Season 1 to Season 2. And by the way, where has Celeborn been all this time? Immigrants are coming into Numenor and taking Numenor's jobs. We need to make Numenor great again. I wonder why Rings of Power has such a low audience. I wonder why they've lost so much of their viewership. Look what they did to Elendil. Does anybody know why Rings of Power has lost so much of its audience? Amazon made up this character for the show. Some guy that loves orcs and he just wants to find orcs a home. Amazon decided to make Lord of the Rings a little more morally gray, even though Lord of the Rings really is not morally gray by any stretch of the imagination. Can any of you think of why Rings of Power has lost so much of its audience? I'm going insane right now. I can't figure out why. Just look at some of the action scenes in the show. Look at how Galadriel gets out of prison. I'm not sure why people don't really like this show, I can't figure it out. Elrond and Galadriel made out at one point in this show, even though canonically speaking Galadriel was already married to Celeborn at this point, and Galadriel is Elrond's mother-in-law. I wonder why Amazon's lost so much of its audience for Rings of Power, because honestly I have no idea why, I can't figure it out.
The generation that comes after us now, this will be their memory of Tolkien, this will be their memory of the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and so we get to move that through and just be the beginning of this revolutionary moment for television, of course, the Tolkien franchise and works.
Seriously, can any of you figure out why Rings of Power's viewership's been dropping? Do any of you know why so many people that watched Season 1 decided not to watch Season 2? Because I honestly cannot figure it out. I have no idea why this is happening. It's almost unbelievable to me, and this is absolutely driving me mad. Someone please explain this to me.